And so just an overview of the agenda for tonight. We know that we're in a transition space. We weren't quite sure what was going to be happening with new curriculum until the election came, but now we do know we have our direction. And so the first part of tonight is going to be really wrapping up this year's implementation and digging a bit deeper into the social emotional learning, and that we have some of our most amazing therapists from the therapy team who are going to be joining us to just give a bit of a foundational background understanding of social emotional learning, because that's a big part of our PU curriculum. And then we're going to switch over to part 2, which is really looking at next year. Again, I don't anticipate having another meeting this year for SET because I just know how busy everybody is. So we're hoping that after tonight, you'll have a good foundation and feel a bit settled in at least where our next steps are for when we return in August. And if you could, if you're not muted, if you could please mute your microphone, that would be appreciated. So one of the big things I wanted to sort of bring to your attention is our resources. We heard a lot during our previous SET meetings of what now? We've got these digital resources, what do we do? We've got these print resources, what do we do? And so I compiled a summary document, which is a bit more synthesized than the last one I shared out with all of you. And it goes through what each of the resources are that we purchased, who we purchased them for, that intended audience or the intended grade. And then we are also adding in here some suggestions on how this resource might be used in other grades, or if it's something that schools are looking at purchasing more of, where might it have an impact for the future? And so this is linked on our Google site. But you'll notice in there as well, if it's highlighted in yellow, it means that we're going to be able to purchase it for another year. So we'll talk a little bit more of that in detail as we move forward in each of the subject areas. But I would recommend, especially administrators on this call, that you print out this resources document and you have it available so you can support you in making those decisions for moving forward and not duplicating efforts as we continue the implementation next year. So when we look at, again, just as a reminder, when we look at where these resources live, everything is in our Google site. So it can be accessed. If you forget the Google site link, no worries. If you go on the EPD under new curriculum, it's the big tile and it'll just link you right into this Google site. We also know many of you have already memorized our shortened bit.ly to access this Google site directly, but we'll continue to use this as we progress next year into new curriculum. And so we just encourage you to make sure that you know how to find things, where things are. And the big thing is the homepage and the what's new. So you'll see the resources I spoke about, that's right linked on the homepage under quick links. And so that is available. The things that we think are really timely and important for you to be having quick access to will either be on the homepage or the what's new. So when you're navigating the Google site, it's important that you realize that we've kind of organized it in these 4 sort of areas, these 4 sections. They're sort of the big rocks of where we felt support was needed. The first tab is within each grade. We're looking at, again, just an overview of curriculum. So what does it look like in each grade? And then we move to planning tools and templates. Things like long-range plans, transition documents, things that will help you kind of navigate the planning portion. And then there's resources. There are resources we've purchased, as well as resources that PD has been built around, but also resources that have been developed, for example, the Fully Alive to help integrate with the PU curriculum. So any resources that we provided will live in that sort of category within the Google site. And finally, progress reports. Again, there's 2 areas of progress reports. One is where it's located in the sort of central information off of the main menu, but then each grade has its own progress reports, which is where those comments, stems, and exemplars live specific to the grades that you're working in. So some new tools and templates for you to just be aware of. We're continually hearing what teachers are saying, trying to address those gaps that we're facing, what teachers are facing, and trying to build supports for moving forward. So here's a couple of examples. There's a new K-3 math vocabulary by grade level now developed. That's on our Google site under tools and templates in math. In English language arts, there's the 1-point rubrics or writing toolkits. We had a group of amazing 10 teachers came in and helped co-create these updates to the writing toolkits. And so again, created by teachers for teachers in collaboration with our consultants. We also are introducing for next year, we recognize you may be teaching a different grade next year. You have new teachers that might be coming in. And so in English language, arts and literature K-3 and math K-3, Bev and Kim have put together just sort of a summary of where they would find things, where teachers would find things, the things that they felt were key around scope and sequence, around resources, and around sort of taking that deep dive into progress reports and sort of that get starting one-stop shop. And so that's in tools and templates under each of the grades and subject. And you'll see an example here of the math. So math K-3 transition guide is now available. So if you have a new teacher coming in, you can point them in this direction, and it just kind of helps to narrow the scope of probably, you know, the overwhelm they may be feeling. Just guide step by step. Here's scope and sequence. Here's some resources. Here's what we've been looking at, as well as when we get into those stems and tools and templates. So when it comes to the resources in the new resources, reminders and renewals, we have the 3 areas, the 3 new curriculum areas that we've been focusing on. And this slide is just a summary slide that you can come back and refer to. These are linked in our Google site under presentations and set meetings. So these slides are all available for you to come back. I'm going to pass it over to Kim now, who's going to dive a bit deeper into sharing about the ELAL resources.
Thank you, Dr. Lynn. So fresh off probably a couple weeks arriving at your school was the sentence a day and a sentence a day for grade 2 from Empowering Writers. Fairly familiar in our schools. We have lots of the narrative and expository resources. We have the getting started video and some slides for your teachers to get started with that, as well as some templates. But please reach out to me if you need any help with getting this supported in your classroom. And again, this is for grade 1, grade 2, and there is definitely some areas where you could find some grade 3 as well. As well, we do have, and I wanted to recognize, so we did the layers of literacy sessions with our teachers and DLs and admin this year. And so they created a Google site for us. And on this Google site, there is a wealth of information, including their slides and articles. And what's fantastic about these slides is it gives you the behind, the why, as well as that curricular connections in K-3, and then some real hands-on, what can I do in my classroom tomorrow? So this website is linked on our Google site, and there is a password which is above there, CCSD literacy, and make sure you have the correct caps on there. But make sure you get all of your teachers to go on this site, download everything off of there, keep it in a little folder, because they are going to be taking this down in August. So they definitely want access to all of these resources. So download it, put it in a folder, and then they can access it whenever they need. Next up, we have some information about Heggerty. So the kindergarten teachers all have the Heggerty online hub, as well as the physical copy of the Heggerty kindergarten curriculum. So just an update, we will be purchasing the Heggerty hub for 1 more year for all of our kindergarten teachers. Now, a heads up for all of those teachers, if you do go on to that Heggerty hub in July, they are going to have some updates, so it might look a little bit different. Now, we've had a lot of questions about why we purchased the kindergarten curriculum. Now, I'm happy to say that actually on our hub, you have access to every single one of the curriculums. So that includes the pre-kindergarten as well as the primary. As well, we have created a little correlation guide for all of those curriculums. So you have access to all of this, which is great and helps you to differentiate in your classroom. As well, I wanted to note that there are some digital assessments on the Haggerty Hub that you could use as kind of a assessment at the beginning of the year to see where you might need to fill in some gaps, as well as at the end of the year to celebrate those successes. If you have any questions about those end of the year assessments that are available on the Hub, please contact NCIS or the early learning consultants for more information. Finally, we have the Reading A to Z that we purchased for all K-3 teachers this year. This is an online platform really to help support comprehensive literacy in the classroom. I'm very happy to say that we will be purchasing this digital license for all grades 1 to 3 teachers again for the 2023-2024 year. Now, I just wanted to highlight two things. Because we are purchasing this again, want to remind teachers about a correlation guide that was created by Christine Knight that really shows what learning outcomes and kind of where you can navigate on the site. So that is on our NCIS Google site. So make sure teachers are checking in there. And of course, you can always sign up with me and I can come out to the school and kind of give a rundown of how that program works. Secondly, I also want to remind all SET reps or admin, you are set up as the account manager for all of your teachers. So you have access to kind of see how your teachers are using the resources and who is utilizing it. So we can better address and help you at that school level. So please reach out to me if you are unaware or don't know how to find those reports, and I'd be happy to help you. I'm now going to pass it over to Bev Dutton.
Thanks, Kim. Well, hello, everyone. I wanted to say we're very excited to share with you that we now have posted on the Google site under Math Resources for your grade and Indigenous Connections to the Math Curriculum Cusps for Teachers. This is a text media set for you to be able to access. Here you can choose, teachers can choose activities, lessons, and information to use with the active links. Feel free to reach out to the Indigenous team as well at any time for support or information regarding the Indigenous cusps. And then moving along, I'd love to give, I'm so excited to do this. Big shout out to Calgary Catholic teachers and congratulations on using the Zorbits platform. We have 72% of our teachers actively using Zorbits in their programs during this year's implementation. Just a quick reminder to check your teacher dashboard and for admin to check in and use their dashboard as well for planning. And I'm happy to say your students will have access to Zorbits over the summer, so you can turn on all of the worlds under class management there for them. And again, please continue to check the offline resources as they are continually being updated. Just recently, they were updated with 3 new bundles. We have financial literacy, outdoor learning, and STEAM. The easiest way to access these resources is to choose a filter and select bundles, and then scroll down closer to the bottom of the page to locate. There's also a new Zorbits printable game guide where teachers can see which games are being played in which worlds. Accessing this guide is through the Google site under your grade level resources, math resources, and choose Zorbits. This guide will share content information relevant to your grade. And to see the names of the worlds, all you need to do is click on Manage Class and Game Controls. And to view or try the games, you click on the game guide, find the game, and go and explore. And then noticing there that K-3 digital license will be renewed for the K-3 teachers through NCIS for next year. Next slide. There we go. We're going to just ask you to please take note that at your schools, the print copies have arrived of the Mathology Little Books and are now there. Check in with your LCL to learn how to access them. If you would like any support towards using these in your program, please reach out to the NCIS team or myself. A reminder that the digital e-text has a lifetime access for you. You can check the Google site for any info at any time for updates. Moving forward with this year's Mathology or mathology.ca and Jump Math resources, that will become a school-based decision and cost, and supply management will send out a renewal information in September for those licenses.
Just for clarification, supply management will send out information about renewal for grades 1 to 3 mathology.ca or mathology.ca, but Jump Math, if it's something that you're looking to proceed with again next year in grades 1 to 3, then that would be a school-based coordination and decision. We'll have a little bit more information about that for next year's curriculum moving forward in later slides. Thank you, Bev. I'm Barb. I'm just not sure. Are you here? I know she had another meeting.
I am here. Thanks,
Wonderful.
Lynn. All right. So in terms of phys ed and wellness resources, all schools should have all of the PATHS resources in your Learning Commons. So that includes the kindergarten starter pack, the grade 1 full kit, the grade 3 full kit, and the grade 6 emoji. We also have Feeling Spaces cards in the mail in the pony coming to you shortly. We have new progress report common stems and exemplars, lots of those on the Google site for Pew, and I know that that's really helpful, especially for schools where you have a separate phys ed teacher and a separate wellness teacher. So we've created some amazing grade specific comments there. And then reminder that the PATHS, the digital version of the Jumpstart lessons, as well as all the support materials, so things like Blackline Masters, book lists, novel studies, parent communication, visuals are all found online at the PATHS website, and the login codes are found on the Google site as well for NCIS under your grade level, Pew, and then PATHS. And then if anyone wants just a little snippet of that, you can always email me. And then also we have a wonderful fully alive Pew alignment document that's on the Religion EPD site as well as the NCIS site. Coming in the fall, great news. We will be able to get online access to the PATHS grade 1, 3, and emoji 6 teacher manuals. So I know that currently teachers are managing to share those teacher manuals. You will get full online access to that in September, so please look out for that. And then Matt has great news about Play Builder. It is an amazing phys ed lesson planning tool, and currently we have 25 schools piloting it. If you would like to talk to Matt for more information or look at signing up, it is a license. Please contact Matt McDonald.
And information about that is also on the resources summary sheet that has all of this information about resources linked.
Perfect. And then I am going to just talk about a little bit about social emotional learning and then pass the floor on to the OT team. But really the reason why we're talking a little bit more about social emotional learning is the fact that it is now explicitly in the new phys ed and wellness K-6 curriculum. So these are skills that the kids really need in order to be able to find academic success. So things like self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, responsible decision-making. And when we take a look at the organizing ideas or the outcomes of Pew, those social emotional learning skills are really found in the character development, safety, and healthy relationships outcomes. And I know that in past teachers have been teaching, SEL skills, especially at the beginning of the year. in order to help kids with self-regulation or co-regulation, with expression of emotions, with that classroom behavior and teamwork and fair play and decision-making. But now the wonderful piece is that it's actually in the curriculum. So there's no excuses now about, not finding time to teach it because it's there within the outcomes. And we have this wonderful PATHS resource that now helps teach all of these skills. So this is just a quick slide to show everyone the bits and pieces of PATHS. So you've got the teacher manuals, there's some posters, the Twiggle Learns to Do Turtle, beautiful storybook for the kinders in terms of teaching kids how to do that regulation piece. We've got the Feeling Spaces cards and Twiggle the Turtle Puppet, which is always a favorite amongst not just our students, but also our teachers. So what the suggestion is that I know I get questions oftentimes in terms of, well, how can I teach using the PATHS lessons as well as Fully Alive and then teach the healthy eating and the financial literacy? So what we recommend, and it's very, very doable, is that we front load using the PATHS lessons in September. September is the opportunity to really build community within your classroom, go over the expectations, get to know the kid's story, really develop those relationships with the kiddos. And that's the opportunity to really take the time to create all of teach these social emotional learning skills so that throughout the rest of the year, the focus can be more on the academics and you're just reinforcing and practicing these skills. So this is just a snippet from the grade 1 and 3 teacher manuals and PATHS, but you'll see that in unit 2, it really focuses on, organization and fair play. And then in unit 1, the golden rule, listening to others. So great scripted lessons there for you. And then the other thing that Kim and I wanted to really focus on is also the amazing connection of PATHS lessons to ELAL. In terms of that oral language outcome for an organizing idea for ELAL, it ties super well into PATHS with that, the piece on the vocabulary, the writing, the oral language, the presentation, the communication skills, teamwork. That actually fits really, really well with ELAL as well. And then another tie into ELA would be the novel studies that are found within PATHS in grades 4 and 5. You can see the novels there, the Drita and Shiloh and Hatchet and Number the Stars. And then Emoji, which is the grade 5-6 resource. There's also 3 different novels that are offered there. So that'll be the next slide that shows the table of contents for the grade 5-6 Emoji. So Wrinkle in Time, Walk 2 Moons, and A Long Walk to Water are the novels there. And again, these are ones where if you'd like to do the novels, there are activities associated within each lesson for the novels, but then of course there's activities that can be done that on each of the units that don't necessarily pertain to the novels as well. So what I recommend is please take that time in September to really front load PATHS. And then the rest of the year can be, you could do your healthy eating, before Christmas. And then that gives you the opportunity to take on Fully Alive from January until June, doing a PATHS lesson, maybe once a week, because they're only about 20 minutes long.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Barb. Now I just want us all to kind of take a bit of a breath. We just shared lots of information with you. Again, this is recorded and the slides are available for you to reference from our Google site under presentation. So I don't want you to worry about having so much information. We have time, but we do feel that as we transition to next year, a great place for teachers to start is with the social emotional learning front loading in the class in September. So that can kind of reduce some of that pressure of I need to understand all the new curriculum. Let's slow it down and let's really look at the foundational skills. And we know how important wellness is in the work that we're doing and setting up those classroom expectations. So one of the things that I've been working closely with Leanna and her team just grappling around this concept of social emotional learning because it is something explicit in the curriculum now. And they have come up with a bit of a summary, deep dive, foundational social emotional understandings and supports that we have right here in our district. And so I'm going to pass it over to Leanna and Kirsten and Laura, who are going to just share for the next 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes, just a little bit of a deep dive, a refresher around social emotional learning. Again, just take little bits as you can, but it's really that foundational stuff that informs the next steps for that front loading in September. Pass it over to you, Leanna, and the team.
Hi, everyone. I don't know if Leanna's in this meeting, so I'll just jump in. And Leanna, if you're here, you can interrupt me. My name is Kristen Bear, and I'm here with Bea Trong. She's filling in for Laura. And we are two of the occupational therapists as part of Calgary Catholic. And yeah, thank you, Dr. Lynn, for asking us. We've been able to collaborate kind of in a multidisciplinary way on what this looks like and where our roles overlap and where we can support each other, specifically when it comes to just supporting the SEL needs of our students in general. So we just have a few quick slides to go over, just some points to keep in mind, and we'll dive a little bit deeper into these, but we'll try to be brief as well. So number one, learning and classroom participation will often look different for our neurodiverse students. I know everyone here is probably very aware of that one. Number two, co-regulation is key. And so a lot of the time when we're talking about self-regulation or when your therapy team might be talking about self-regulation, oftentimes we're really talking more about co-regulation, specifically with those Division 1 students. And then sensory regulation is really the foundation to emotional regulation and social skills. So when we say learning can look different, we really need to keep an open mind about what that actually looks like in the classrooms, especially for our diverse learners. They may never quite look or present quite like the majority of your class, the majority of the students, and that's okay. And there are just ways that we may need to tailor and modify some of our expectations and the ways that we support them in the classroom. An example is you probably have one or several of students who really have a difficult time maybe sitting at carpet. What might actually be happening is that kid that's spinning around at the back of the carpet or pacing the room, that might actually be a productive way that they are actually starting to learn to self-regulate and giving their body the input that it requires for them to be at that kind of just right level of arousal to attend to and to kind of participate in their learning environment. It's also important to normalize how this may look different across students in the classroom. And I think the beginning of the school year is always a really great time to start those conversations and discussions about, how just like all of us look different, we might talk differently. Our brains and our bodies are all unique and they all work differently as well. And so what one student may need to help their brain or help their eyes and ears and that sort of thing, listen and pay attention, might look different from other students. So this can be a good way to open up discussions about students in your classroom that may use alternative seating, students who may use noise canceling headphones, fidgets, that sort of thing. If you're looking for a great resource, there's a book called Arnie and His School Tools, and that's a really fun and engaging book just to introduce the idea that everyone learns a little bit differently, and sometimes we can have tools that help us do that. I included this chart, effective co-regulation by developmental age, and I included the toddlerhood and preschool because, as we all know, that even though we may be working with chronologically aged, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds, oftentimes their brain development may be at a younger stage. And so when it comes to co-regulation, kind of breaking down what that might look like depending on where your students may be at. So if you're thinking about a toddler or even an infant stage, it's really about that warmth and nurturing. You as the caregiver or the adult, you're anticipating their needs, you're responding to the cues. And I know it's hard at the start of the school year to kind of pick up on a lot of those cues and triggers, but that's part of also part of the supports that we can offer as the therapy team too, to kind of understand different sensory profiles and what may or may not trigger them, put them in a higher state of arousal, that sort of thing. And then as we kind of progress by that developmental age, you can see that we can start to provide maybe some more demands in terms of expectations, what is expected of them, expected, unexpected behaviors. You can use that sort of language. We're starting to introduce more calming strategies, but really modeling that for them, walking through that with them. So like, for example, with the PATHS program, the turtle, that's a great opportunity to kind of practice that together as a group. And then, of course, we always love to see if there can be some sort of space in the classroom or outside of the classroom that can be used as a calming corner or just a safe space where they can go. And oftentimes they may need some support to get there or that sort of thing. But once again, this is all kind of part of that co-regulation piece. And then moving into kind of where you can get into more conflict resolution, more kind of coping skills, and also kind of problem solving those more social and emotional situations as they developmentally get to that stage. And of course, just always to remember that you as the caregiver, as their teacher, as their safe adult, are the most powerful tool when it comes to supporting their regulation. And so if you feel yourself becoming a little dysregulated, I certainly do a lot of the times when I'm working with some of my more challenging students, it's so valuable and so important to model the behavior that you want to see reflected back, essentially. So, and depending on the student and depending what's appropriate to, you can use that opportunity as a teaching moment. Miss Kristen is feeling pretty frustrated right now that, I have asked you guys to be a little bit quieter and we're not using our quiet voices. So, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a few deep breaths and we're going to figure out how we can use our indoor voices better. So even just talking through and modulating that in the moment can be really helpful. This chart just shows the balance, kind of a self-regulation and co-regulation in the sense of how much is needed from the caregiver, from the adult, versus what we can expect from the child. So going back to just that terminology, the self-regulation, the ability to kind of do that independently only starts to begin at approximately age 8. So that's something to keep in mind, especially if you're a Div 1 teacher, kindergarten teacher. It is more likely that these students are still a couple years away from being able to self-regulate. So to have the expectation that they can, okay, I'm upset, I'm going to do some hand presses and take 10 deep breaths and then I'm going to feel better. That would be, for most students, an unrealistic expectation, especially early on in the school year. So just looking at where you need to come in and kind of adjusting expectations in terms of how much is required on your part as the co-regulator, and once again, just how valuable and important that role is.
And hi, so my name is V and I'm just popping in for Laura. And so I'm just another OT on the team. So for this slide, we're talking about the hierarchy of regulation. So similarly to Maslow's hierarchy, we have our base foundation, which is that sensory regulation piece. So rather than, and then that middle section is emotional regulation. And then the top tier is social skills. So we always want to be cognizant of the hierarchy of regulation because we need to really build, especially at the beginning of the school year, make sure that our students are in that, have the building block of the sensory regulation piece before we move on to that emotional regulation. And then at the top part of that tier, the social skills. So all of our students, especially our neurodivergent or diverse learners, they may be at different stages on that hierarchy of regulation. And of course, that's where maybe the therapy or OT team can come in to support you as well. So to just dive deeper into the hierarchy, so that base level foundation, it's that internal state of not just a student, but of yourself or of a human, and their ability to maintain an appropriate level of arousal to respond. So for example, some of that sensory pieces, some of our basic senses, so hunger, thirst, feeling cold, feeling hot, and being able to tie that in with how we're supposed to respond to the environment. That second tier is emotional regulation. So tying some of those sensations that we might feel and combining it with appropriate thoughts and feelings. So this is our outward presentation of our internal state. So if I am feeling hungry, I know that I'm feeling hungry, and then how I respond to it is I might get food. So then the top tier is that yellow, the social skills piece. So we have to have our foundational sensory regulation, then tie it with our emotional regulation in order to be able to properly connect and communicate and interact with others to potentially meet our needs. So our social skills can include verbal and nonverbal prompting. So using the example of being hungry, I can be hungry, and then I need to be able to know that and recognize that I'm hungry. I need to know that I might need some food or a snack. And the social skills may be conveying to an adult that I need a snack to feel better. So there's that hierarchy. And like I said, with neurodivergent and diverse learners, different children might be at different stages of the hierarchy and how we can support them appropriately. So some resources that we, as a therapy team, or as through the PATHS program, we might encounter is to meet that first foundational larger block is often our universal strategies that can be beneficial for all children. And that is like some of the tools that Kristen had mentioned, like alternative seating, changing up our environment to make sure that the needs of the kids are met, visuals, co-regulation. These are all body breaks, heavy work. These are all universal strategies that meet that base layer foundation of sensory regulation. Interoception is a program by Kelly Mahler that really teaches children the really basic senses of what they might be feeling. And then how does your engine run, which I'm sure a lot of the early learning folk has heard of this program, where it teaches children that your body is like a car engine. Sometimes it might run high, sometimes it might run low, sometimes it runs just right. So really tying those basic emotions to sensation and being able to understand with some vocabulary. So these are some of the resources within the sensory piece that we as a team might bring in to meet some of the emotional regulation piece. So if this is at the higher level, tying the sensations with emotions is potentially the Mind Up program, the zones of regulation, the focus sequence. So as a team, we might bring in some of these extra resources to complete as universal sessions or SMART target group sessions to really teach those kids that are ready for that emotional regulation piece. And then at the very top tier, we would be working on the more targeted social skills. So this really aligns with parts of PATHS, of course, but this is kind of at the highest level. So being aware of our learners and where they're at on the hierarchy, we might bring in programs that are related to the social thinking program by Michelle Garcia. So We Thinkers, Superflex, there's also Kelso's Choice, and We Can Make It Better. So these are just some programs that you might hear or might be introduced to, or you can inquire about with your therapy team. And lastly, here are some potential EPD resources that you might want to access. So Kristen, I believe, did a wonderful self-regulation and stress responses PG that's available on EPD. And then we have other resources and presentations by scanning the QR code.
Awesome. Thank you so much to both of you for coming and giving us a bit of a deep dive into social emotional learning. I think it's something that we talk a lot about, but really even just understanding that hierarchy of regulation and how important that sensory is in addressing it before the emotional and then the social. And you can see probably from that hierarchy, the natural connections also with the information Barb shared in the table of contents from our past resource. So it was really important when we were buying resources for schools that we don't throw resources out. You really are contextualizing them and choosing resources that are going to meet the needs of your students in the best way. And so this is why I think understanding the broader scope of supports and resources is just so critical as we move forward, because no classroom is the same, no student is the same. And so really recognizing the wealth of knowledge and supports and resources we have as we take those steps to supporting kids as they're moving forward and co-regulating and self-regulating. So thank you so much to both of you for joining us tonight. I just love if you could now, participants, if just throw in the chat, what are one or two takeaways that kind of resonated with you with this idea of social emotional learning? What are some takeaways? I know for me is understanding the importance of that foundational sensory regulation before emotional regulation is being addressed. But what really stood out for you? Throw it in the chat. I'd love to see that. So what's next? Looking to October and September, it is going to come faster than we thought. I keep reminding myself and the team that it was only last week that we got our marching orders of where to go and what our direction is. And so we've definitely hit the ground running. I feel like the little girl in this GIF. I'm still hanging on to the door handle. I know a lot of you are probably feeling the same way, but I'm just trying to be mindful of coming back to my own emotional, sensory and emotional regulation as we proceed through this space. So we've updated the Power of 5. We do still have a mandated curriculum. We are professionals. It is our work to design student learning and student experiences. That is what makes us professionals. So we've got this. Some of the content is the same. So our recommendation is we start with what we know, and like we did this year, and we're going to continue to embed as we move through the year. And really, it's going to be a reminder for us that nobody has this figured out. We're going to take things a step at a time, build on what we have. And then it's outcomes based still. And when you look at the number of outcomes, there's actually not that many. Sometimes we're getting lost in the cusps, the knowledge, understanding, skills, and procedures. So it's giving ourselves permission to just look at those outcomes. I know in ELAL, there's 8 or 9 outcomes. And of course, there's lots of depth to those, but just staying anchored with the foundational, the architecture of the curriculum. And then a reminder that we are here to help you. The NCIS team is committed, as you've seen, in continuing to build out PG, planning tools and templates, resources, and then guiding you through things like progress reports. So what's mandated? We know 4 to 6 English language arts, K to 3 French immersion language arts and literature, and of course we'll optionally implement 4 to 6 again this year. Mathematics 4 to 6 and science K to 3. We think fine arts is going to come in for piloting later in the year, but it wouldn't come for full implementation until next school year. And then social studies, we've not heard yet. But now we have not finished, but we have implemented the first step, the first phase of the K to 6 PUE. And that's why we spent a little bit more time tonight on digging deeper into that social emotional learning component, that wellness piece of phys ed and wellness. So what supports are in place? I come back to this slide. There's lots that are out of our control. We certainly all have our beliefs, opinions around curriculum, some things that are wonderful, other things that we're not so sure about. So what is in our control? Again, coming back to that place of there's a lot going on. So we have control over about how we think about our steps. And so we continue to try to remind ourselves and anchor that even right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things we don't know. But over time, just like last year, I hope a lot of what we shared with you today was a review. And you're going, yeah, I actually kind of know what this is. I know how to get onto the NCIS site. I know where to find resources. I hope that over time that you're going to see that through this process next year, we will gain more clarity as we proceed through the process. So you've got these resources. We've developed a sneak peek at September 2023. We did it as an optional PG for May 29th, but it's available. The slides and the recording are there for you. And that's where we really take a look at next year's curriculum. What are the mandates? What are the changes? So the highlights and the points to ponder, those gaps we're going to have to address. What are some getting started tips for teachers for September so that you're feeling like you don't have to do everything at once, but you know, front loading your ELAL with social emotional learning, getting that oral language development and those other organizing ideas as your focus for September. You've got it. Like that stuff that can be very readily planned and implemented for while we're figuring out and navigating our next steps forward. And then finally, what are some key internal and external supports that really is important that you're familiar with? An example of that, so the top 3 that I picked out is, and these are all linked on our Google site as well as in this slide presentation, the new Learn Alberta site. That is critical. If you've not signed up or if teachers not signed up and gotten their login, that is number 1 on the list because that's where they have access to all of the curriculum, the resources that Alberta Education has procured, lesson planner templates, videos on how to navigate what's new in each of the curriculum. So there's so much that is available for you there and really just getting familiar with the Learn Alberta site. The second one is the Alberta Regional PD Consortium. So this is Alberta Education, and I've mentioned it in previous set meetings, but Alberta Education has actually provided funding to the Alberta Regional Consortium to develop resources that are timely and responsive to new curriculum implementation. And they've created a new curriculum implementation hub, which has the new curriculum for next year, some reminders about this year, comparative documents. So there's a lot of information available for teachers, scope and sequence documents. You don't need to worry about planning out your long range plans. There's tons of stuff there. So don't create until you see what's already been created for you. And let's work on adapting and shifting as we go. And finally, our NCIS site. Please do continue to connect teachers with that, connect your colleagues, and to come back and continue looking at what's new so that you can feel like you have a bit of an anchor on what is available. But at the end of the day, you are the professionals and you will kind of walk this process just as you did this year, starting with what you know and then integrating new information, new resources, new understandings. So everything that you need is again on the what's new, the PG recordings, those presentation slides, which will be, and the recording, which will be really important to get a sense of next year. And as well as I've linked everything in there. If a teacher is new and they need to sign up and set up their new Learn account, I've got the information in there of how to do that, as well as navigating what we really would hope that as a starting point, do these steps, and you will have a great foundation for coming in September. We'll continue along building out our roadmap, same as this year. This is the same that we use this year. Next year, we'll continue to align system-wide communications, optimizing our networks between our colleagues within our schools, our communities of practice, our school engagement team. There'll be some adjustments and adaptations, digging deeper into curriculum next year and building some scaffolding around the new curriculum will be important, but we will build out lots of supports, lots of opportunities for PLCs, COPs, sets. We'll have scope and sequence. If you want to walk alongside us, those will be developed out for teachers. So it can be sort of that just in time, what you need to focus on right now. Continue to build out our NCIS site. And of course, those professional growth opportunities will continue to be offered throughout next year. We're going to always start with pedagogy, and you'll see that in the recording from the sneak a peek for September, with the big rocks. What are the big rocks that no matter what happens with curriculum, if the pedagogy is not there, we'll never fit everything in. So really looking at what are those big rocks of pedagogy, those best practices that are going to permeate throughout all of the year. And so we've highlighted some of those for teachers within each of the curriculum areas as, again, a way of focus and anchoring the work. Again, some of it is the same. And so starting with what you're familiar with is perfectly fine for September as well. So we're going to build on this idea of curriculum is a cycle. We're going to continue to recognize that as we dig deeper into curriculum, it does spiral. We'll have opportunities to come back to it. We are going to look a lot at grade level progressions. We know our schools and our classes are getting more and more complex. And so there's that differentiation challenge of how do you meet the needs of all the learners in the class. And so really wanting to step into this idea of learning in a content area is about progression, kind of like what the OTs shared with us is there's that foundational stuff, but then it's moving up into the more complex. So how can we support in that scaffolding and providing PD around the progression of learning and how that progresses over time? It'll be a similar design as this year has been for next year, where we'll look again. This is just an example. We haven't built it out yet, but we will be looking at a cycle of engagement where we're looking at communities of practice, school engagement team. I will ask for one admin contact to get started. Community of practice, we're going to be asking for principals to please provide us with some suggestions or recommendations of teachers who are interested. There's more about that in a follow-up email that's coming your way in the next day or so. Again, we want to get consultants out into your schools. We've heard great feedback about that. We know a lot's going on, so if we can help to navigate that, we want to get out in schools straight away if we can in September, October, and really then continue to build out that hybrid PD. And even if you want us to pop in for 5 minutes on your agenda at a staff meeting, we're happy to do it. Again, we know you've got a lot on your plate and we can help to focus and direct some of this work. And know that we are, building this as we go. And we're going to take small steps. We're going to continuously improve. And we're going to adapt based on the feedback that we are hearing, as well as where we're seeing some things working well. As far as resources go, we want to remind you that resource selection is, there's no one resource. The curriculum is not something we can buy. A resource isn't going to address every part of the outcome. So we are really wanting to focus on, we are professionals. We're looking at curriculum. We're looking at those outcomes, and then we're designing lessons that respond to the cusps, but that then support those resources, or we utilize those resources that are unique to our own professional judgment as a teacher, your own judgment, your context, every context is different in how you're going to select those resources. And we look at things when we're looking at getting resources and vetting them. Is it curricularly aligned? Is it developmentally appropriate? What is that student experience? Is it engaging, or is it rote, paper pencil? Is it inclusive, and is it accessible? So again, we talked about universal design for learning and how we can ensure the resources that are selected provide multiple entry points and multiple pathways for students to learn, engage, and share what they know. So again, we're weaving in curriculum, pedagogy, and inclusive practices throughout the resources that we are selecting. I do have some initial thoughts. Again, like I said, hit the ground running on trying to, last year we got the information in May that we were moving forward. This year we got it in the end of May. So we really have limited timeline to think about resources, but based on what we've seen this year, what we're looking at initially, and this is draft, but I know I'm getting questions from schools about, you want to buy things and what do we need to get? I would recommend slowing down for 4 to 6 and K to 3 science. Focus on the 1 to 3 based on those resources that I've shared out, that resource summary document I've shared with you. But in K-3, we're looking at bringing in visual journals for all of our schools because we really want kids thinking as scientists, being great observers, great questioners. And the reason we're kind of holding off on resources is because Edmonton Public Schools and the 4 Metro boards got a grant from the government to build out the science resources for schools. So the scope and sequence documents are already available on the Edmonton Public Schools website. And then in August, there's going to be the getting started lesson plans. They're calling them the lesson snippets for K-3. So we want to hold off. And again, a lot of what we've heard is it's going to be stuff you have in your classroom. And then we'll work throughout the year to build more of those kits and update those kits you have. But those scope and sequence documents are already there for you. And the lesson plans, snippets will be happening, which will be more than sufficient to get things started. In addition to those visual journals and getting kids thinking as scientists and getting out in nature and questioning and really engaging in that critical thinking around science. In grades 4 to 6, we are looking at purchasing a multi-year license for mathology.ca or mathology.ca digital. And we're doing that because we felt Jump Math was not going to be sufficient in addressing the curriculum changes, as well as the differentiation that's needed in your classrooms. So we felt that mathology.ca was going to be more responsive to that complexity and that scaffolding that's going to be needed in grade 4 to 6. And the really great thing about this methodology is they've now come out with a student practice book in French and English. So we recognize that there's a bit of an allure around the Jump Math practice and assessment book, but we also know that it's never fully utilized. It costs over $32 per year for every student, so it's quite cost prohibitive unless you get the deal. And the practice books are much more foundational, much more scaffolded, and not as extensive. So it will, we feel, be well utilized in a year's time, and they're only $10. So again, a big cost savings for schools in a sustainability perspective, well aligned with the curriculum, and is complementary to the Mathology Digital, which allows you to differentiate lessons. We will look at Dreambox for 4 to 6 for our Spanish schools as well. They started with the grade 1 to 3 this year, but we will be having more conversation around the Dreambox for 4 to 6 for a digital platform. And then 4 to 6 ELAL, we are looking at extending that up into the Reading A to Z, because it's got everything a teacher would need to be able to get started and have a good foundation around the many outcome areas and organizing ideas in the ELAL curriculum. And we'll be extending outwards their way. We're looking at the digital resource for that as well, because that word play is really an important part of the curriculum, including this new concept called morphology that will be one of those areas we'll have to build some understanding around, but also resources. And K-3 Philal, we are looking at what our next steps will look like for that. And more information will be coming in August around that. But I really wanted to have a bit of a foundation for ending up this year and then thinking about next year. So I want you to really keep calm and check your inbox, principals and admin set who are here today, because we will send a follow-up of what we need from you. So we really want you to find time, make time. We know that's really asking like you to win the lottery at this point in the year. But if teachers have the opportunity to even look at this video, it's 40 minutes. It's going to give a foundation of what is needed and where they can sort of feel settled for next year in the new curriculum. Communities of practice, we want to get started on that straight away. We want to pull a group of 20 teachers again from across the district like we did this year. I can't tell you, the community of practice teachers were so phenomenal this year in helping us make sure that what the NCIS team was creating was responsive to teacher needs, that it was addressing what was currently required, and then just the brain capacity, the brain to be able to develop and build out these resources and tools and templates for teachers. So we really are, we're going to be sending a link. So we ask admin to forward that to any teachers that you think would be interested by the end of this week coming up, because we will be setting up our groups. Now we're going to be picking from a whole bunch of criteria based on, we want representation from each quadrant of the city. We want to have at least a couple from each grade level. And so it will definitely, not everybody who puts their name forward will be able to be part of this. But we hope that if you're not and you're keen, that you'll be able to be part of PG or our school engagement team meetings coming up. And then we really want to get a bit more information around your resource needs and any other suggestions you might have. We want you to remember that we need to take time to celebrate the progress we made this year. It's really important. When we started on this journey, we had lots of ideas and lots of great support by all of you, all of our teachers in our community of practice, and all of our supervisors and directors who supported the journey as well. And it's important that we recognize the learning from the end of this year, but it's way more important that we recognize all of our steps and gains we've made this year. And again, we couldn't do it without you, your engagement, your feedback, your candor, your just your involvement. And I think that that's what makes a great team, is when we all bring our ideas together, but we also support one another and recognize that it is a journey and not necessarily a destination. So mark your calendars, admin, please. I don't have an exact date, but I know we're coming back the week of August 21 to 25th before the teachers come back on the 29th. So I will provide sort of a 1-hour virtual update for the admin around resources and PG plans. Also to let you know more about our August 30th and 31st PG sessions that we are going to be providing. For your own planning purposes, admin, they will be held in the afternoons on both of those days. So you can sort of pencil us into your communications with teachers, and more information will be shared with you in August when we get back. So if you need help, you can't find something, please know you're not bothering us. Send us an email, reach out. Our current team is listed there: Kim, Christine, Bev, Shelley, Matt, and Barb. Of course, Rachel and Joan for Filal and Spanish. But our 2023 team, we're busy this week doing hiring. We're hiring for a new math consultant. Big, huge thank you to Bev Dutton, who stepped in to support the K-3 curriculum this year, but is moving back to her love of Division I teaching. And so we'll be hiring for the 4 to 6 position. But Jessie Zanatig will take over for Shelley. Kim Guzin, and we now have hired Camille to support with that curriculum for Christine, taking over for Christine. So welcome to Jessie and Camille on the team. And more will be coming in about who we've hired for science, as well as our Filal. So that's all we have. We can stop the recording. I will put back up the slides for the feedback, and I will stay